Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Programming in Access 2013. My name is Steve Bishop, and today we're going to be continuing our series on VBA, or Visual Basic for Applications. This is going to be covering part 2 of the application object, so let's go ahead and hop back into our database. And I did end on the import XML and export XML in the end of video 1, but I unfortunately skipped this combo box, and I meant to show you something here that has to do with the screen for application.screen. Normally, a combo box has a drop down. You can click on this arrow to drop down a list of different options that the user can pick from, and as the user starts to type something in, it will automatically start to fill in the first value that matches. So let's take this out here. I'm just going to say first name, and you'll see that the only time that we really get the drop down is if we click on this drop down arrow. And that may be perfectly good. That may be exactly what you're looking for. But let's say I want to enhance the functionality a little bit here. I'm going to go into my design view, and I'm going to go to the on.focus so that whenever somebody moves to this particular control, this particular event will trigger. And I'm going to go ahead and uncomment out this part that says I want to make it so that the active control, when the employee's combo box gets the focus, go to the application.screen.activeControl and do a drop down. I'm also going to do the same thing for when somebody changes the value that's in the combo box. So both when the user selects the combo box and when they start to type something in the combo box, that is going to initiate this drop down. Okay? So let's go back here, and let's just say I click on it here, and you'll see as soon as I got focus, I now have the drop down. Normally, again, I would have to click on the drop down here in order to get it, but as long as I switch from so long as I change the focus to that combo box and I type in the text box here, or click on the text box here, I'll get the drop down, which is perfectly exactly what I want. But the focus is still on there. I got rid of the drop down, but now I want to have first name. I'm going to start typing that out, and you can see when I change the value that's inside of the combo box, once again, I immediately get the drop down. So it's forcing the drop down to show both when somebody changes the focus to the combo box and when somebody starts to type something in. And that can be handy for functionality. You may want to provide that for all of your controls. The other thing that I want to show you about this screen object is that not only can you work with the active control, but you can also go to the previous control. Okay? So you can go to the previous control, you can go to the parent of the current screen, mouse pointer, which we dealt with before, and there's the active report, active form, etc., etc. So there are definitely some different options to do with this application.screen that you might find useful. All right, so let's go ahead and move on here to file dialog. Now, file dialog, you are going to be doing a lot. File dialog is one of those things that you will find yourself using all the time, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to allow the user to select a file name from their computer, and then you want to get that information as a string from them. So it's kind of an easily presentable, follow through to go find a file on your computer and then select that particular file or multiple files. Well, here we've got this is essentially the way you want to do this. You want to dim a object variable as a file dialog, and then you're going to dim item as a variant. Now this could be any sort of variable that you want, but you need to make some sort of variant variable, and I named mine item. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the diag value, this file dialog value up here. I'm going to set it so that the to application.fileDialog, and then I'm passing in this MSO file dialog file picker. This is an enumeration of different options that I have to select from for my file dialog. And on this website here, which is at wisal.co.uk, you can go ahead and look at that. And if you want to retype that in, you're welcome to. He's got here MSO File Dialog File Picker, or you can select MSO File Dialog Folder Picker, or MSO File Dialog Open, or MSO File Dialog Save As. So there are different types of dialogues for file picking that you can come up with. And in this particular case, for example, I could just have it so they select a folder instead of a file. Or, they want to pick one that must already exist, so it would be an open, or lets you save as, okay? So there are different types of options that you can have with your file dialog. So I've gone with the MSO File Dialog File Picker because I want them to pick a file, or multiple files, in fact, could be selected. And you'll see I'm adding these things called filters. So I go to the diag.filters and I add, and the add function requires two different parameters. One is what is the name of the filter, and what is the file extension that you're filtering. Okay, so here I'm doing PDFs, and then I also have all files as ***. Then to actually show the dialog, you're going to do a diag.show. All right, and in this particular case, it's going to return true when it opens. And then once that happens, once you get the diag show equal to true, then you're going to want to iterate through the diag.selected items. You're going to iterate through them using a for each loop, and this is where we use the item variant that I created up here, so that for each item in the selected items is then going to be usable down here in the code here, which I'm just going to do a debug.print of the item that's selected, and it's going to put it down here in the immediate window. Okay, so let's go ahead and run through this. File diag, okay, set application.file dialog, MSO file dialog file picker, add my filters, and then show my dialog box. And there we go. There is a beautiful looking Microsoft standard file dialog picker. Okay, and you can see here my filters that I set. PDFs as *.pdf, and then I also have all files as *.*. So I could pick either one of those, and that will change what is viewable here as far as the files that I have that are selectable. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do PDFs. I'm going to filter out to just the PDFs. I'm going to go ahead and select Report, click OK, and now once I've exited out of the diag show, and it's going to return true that I've exited out, then it's going to do the for each loop on the selected items from my diag screen. And the first one, of course, was the report.pdf file that is selected, including the full folder path and file name included, right? And then since that was the only one I selected, my for each is done, and then my if is done, and now my sub is done. Okay, so you can use that in order to go and do something. And in fact, our next example with follow hyperlink is something that's kind of relevant here. Okay, because in follow hyperlink, what we're doing is we're going application.follow hyperlink, and then we're passing in a path to wherever we want to open. And in this particular case, it could be either a website or it could be a file on your computer or on the network somewhere. Okay, so I could theoretically take this item that I have up here, put it into a variable, and then do this application.follow hyperlink and just pass in that variable that I allowed the user to select, and that would in fact open up whatever the file was that was selected, which we have down here. All right, so follow hyperlink is pretty neat. It just opens up in whatever, if you're passing it a website, it's going to open up at whatever your default web browser is, and if you pass it a file location, it's going to open up in whatever the default application is for that particular file extension. Okay, it's just going to basically tell Windows, open this. And then there are a couple of different values here for parameters. For those of you in web, you may notice that you can do a get method. You can do a post method if you'd like also, but get method is perfectly fine. And we'll just go through, follow hyperlink to the website, and you'll see my Internet Explorer browser pops up. And we go to this website that I have selected, which just happens to be my current DB video. All right. Then we have the test.serviceinc PDF file, and that will open up my PDF file in my default PDF viewer, which is Foxit Reader. Okay? So, that is how you can use follow hyperlink. You'll probably find yourself doing that quite a bit. Sometimes you need to open up files externally from your Access application. All right, so let's talk forms. Now, in my forms, you'll see that the syntax that I'm using is just forms. I could do application.forms if I wanted to, but instead I could just do forms. It's the same thing. Again, when you're dealing with the application object, it's kind of the default object that Access knows you're pointing to. So you can access certain objects within that application object without actually having to type application to get to them. Now, I sometimes like to do this just so that I can see, okay, maybe I'm mistyping it. Maybe, I'm doing froms or something like that. So when I type F, I can look, oh, there it is. There's forms right there. I can just press the down arrow, get to the one I want, hit the tab key, and there we go. Now I've typed it out correctly. So sometimes typing in the root object is very nice to do. So we're going to go ahead and do a do command to open up this particular form called FRM login, which we've worked on before. And then what I'm going to do is in the forms collection, I'm going to open the FRM login. The forms here have a key, and the key in this particular case is the name of the form, which is FRM login. And then I'm going to drill down to the CBO username, get its value, and I'm going to go ahead and set that value to sbishop. Now here's the key thing. This forms collection is filled only with forms that are currently open. If the FRM login is not already open, I will get an error that it cannot find the form. So you must open the form first, and then you can look in the forms collection in order to drill down to that. Now this is highly important because if there are plenty of times, and you've probably already thought about this at some other previous stage of working in Access, you've been trying to think, how can I have two different forms open simultaneously and have the second form do something on the first form? Well, this is exactly how you do it. Notice I'm in the form_FRM form, and I'm accessing the FRM login form and changing the CBO username value to sbishop. Okay, so we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and open up my form first, which is this login form, and now I'm still running code from within my FRM form, and it's going to set the combo box value to sbishop. And if I look back over here, you can see there it is. There's my username is set to sbishop. All right, so that's how you access the forms collection. All right. There's also reports, which works the same as forms, and there's also modules. But with modules do not need to be opened in order for you to access them, but reports do. So forms, reports, those must be open before you can actually access their controls. But modules, you can just go ahead and type in modules, and they don't need to be open, obviously, because you can't really open a module. All right, so that is the forms collection. Then we have isCompiled. IsCompiled just basically checks to see is the current application you're running compiled, and it's handy to do a check on this to see if your application is compiled, because then you can run a command, this run command AC command compile and save all modules. So you're going to go ahead and compile all of the modules that are in your application here. All right, and it's going to check and see currently is compiled is set to true, and since not is the keyword that we're using, it's going to check if not true, then go ahead and run the command. But since it is true, I'm just going to go ahead and skip over it. All right. And you can see if I go to the debug compile, you'll see that I cannot do that. All right. Printer. The printer is something that you will be finding yourself changing frequently also, because maybe there's something you want to print to a specific printer, or maybe you want one particular report to print to one printer and a different report to print to another printer. Well, what you can do is you can get that IntelliSense out of the way. You can set the application.printer equal to application.printers, that's plural, and then specify the name of a printer to set as the new application printer. So I'm just going to show you as a debug here first that this is currently my printer, this Canon. All right. Now I'm going to change it to the Foxit Reader PDF printer, which if I open up my printers here, you'll see I have Foxit Reader PDF printer, and there's the Canon that's currently the default. Okay. So I'm going to change it, and now after I've changed it, lo and behold, Foxit Reader PDF printer is now my default printer. Let's go ahead and clear that out. I'm going to set it back to Canon MG200, 2200, and then print it out again, and now it is the Canon MG2200 series printer. So that is how you change your printer. You specify it, again, you set the application.printer equal to application.printers, plural, and then in parentheses and quotation marks you put the name of the printer that you want to change it to. All right? So that is printers and printer. We have get option, which get option, if we talk about options in your application, we have this auto compact option here, and currently it is set to true, which if I open up my file.options and go to current database, and if I scroll down here, if I can find it, there it is, compact on close. You see that? And currently it is set to true. So I can access this particular access option right through my VBA code by going into the application.getOptions and then giving it the name of the object that I want to set. Oh, what am I doing? Oh, I forgot to exit out of this. I gotta get out of there before I can continue. There we go. Okay, so that showed you that it is currently true. Now let's say we want to set the option, and right now it's currently set to true. Let me set it to false. So now get option is the one that shows me the option value, application.set option, and then passing in the string name of the option, and then I'm passing in a value as the second parameter. And that is going to allow me to set the auto compact to false. And now if I take a look again, and compact on close is now unchecked. Okay, so there you have it. There's some different options. If you're looking for where to get all those options, I recommend that you do some Bing search in order to find out what the set option and get option options are. This auto compact is just one in particular I wanted to show you. But these are a whole different series of different settings that you can access, all that are up here in the file options, and then you can go in here and change that. And that may be very handy that you want to do some of those changes right from within the VBA code. Alright, so, oh, and just so you can see, if I do get option again, you'll see auto compact repair is set to false. Okay, good, good, good. Alright, Temp Vars. Temp Vars are a way to store basically variable information in a temporary variable. So you can store information such as, for example, I'm going to store I'm going to create a temporary variable called username, and then I'm going to fill its value with the environ username. And if I just click on this, I'm going to press F1 here, and we're going to look at the Temp Vars because I just want to show you this. Temp Vars are, They are string only. I'm trying to find that for you here. So by default, temp var object remains in memory until access is closed. You can use remove method and remove temp var macro action to remove temp var object. In VBA, object is accessible only to the members of the access application object. And yeah, you can only store text or numeric data. All right, so it cannot store objects. So you can't create an object and store it in your temp vars. You can only do text or numbers. All right, so that's important to understand if you're going to house any information in your temp vars. So I'm going to do username and computer name, and I'm going to grab those from the environ function, and I'm going to store them in my application temp vars, and then I'm going to go ahead and print those from my temp vars collection. Again, I'm not doing the application. I could do application.tempvars if I wanted to, but shorthand I don't really need to, so temp vars, and then I'm going to pass in the username is the key, and I'm going to grab the value of the temp vars with that particular key, and I'm going to print that to my immediate window. Let me go ahead and clean that out. And then I've also got the computer name here, which I set up, so temp vars computer name, and send me and put up its value. And then there's this final function here called subroutine, excuse me, that is remove all. That's just going to clean out all of those variables out of my temp vars. So let's go ahead and hit, we're going to add, and then I print it, and there's Steve is on Steve's PC. All right. So later on, I can go and I can retrieve that variable from all of my other methods. This temp vars is not only strictly accessible from within this particular module. I can go to any other module and go to the application temp vars and retrieve that information. Then I'm going to go ahead and remove them all, and we're done. Last but not least, we have the version, and this is the version of your Access, and lo and behold, it is 15.0, which Access 2013 is in fact version 15.0. So that's going to be important sometimes because you want to find out what version of the application that your database is running in, and maybe you wrote it for a version that is earlier than 2013, and you don't. If the application.version is too high, then you want to say, sorry, you must run it under 2010 or something like that. Or you can check to make sure that this number is bigger than a previous version, and you don't want somebody to be able to run your application under anything less than 2013 or 2010 or whatever version you want. So this application.version is something that you will go to in order to find out what version of Office is being run. All right, so that's it. That's the application object. Obviously, there's a ton more in here, and I'll just do application dot, and you can see there is a lot more in there than what I've talked about. But I figured this would be a good start. This would be a good cover of most of the basic functions that you'll find yourself using.